Hello, this is an overview of the common workflow in CounselEar of creating a patient profile, creating and completing a questionnaire, and then creating and completing or collecting information for a patient visit, so the encounter with the patient. So I'll go through each one of these processes in order, as hopefully they'll reflect a common workflow. Now it's important to note that this process will likely be almost the same whether we're talking about a patient in a senior nursing facility or we're talking potentially about a prisoner in a correctional facility. So the workflow will be very similar with maybe some modifications on, for example, the questionnaire that's used or perhaps the data that's collected for test results. But otherwise, the workflow itself is going to be largely the same. So what we'll do here is we're going to start by clicking on Patients in the top menu bar and then selecting New Patient. Now I do want to highlight at this moment, there is of course the alternative to create an appointment for this patient first. So if an appointment is created first for this patient, you likely will see them of course already on the schedule. And if an appointment is created, that means the patient profile is already in place. So this step would not be needed. I'm going to work from the standpoint that they are not on the schedule and we just need to create a profile. So I'm going to go ahead and select New Patient. Then I'll go ahead, you want to make sure and pick the preferred clinic right from the list. I'll go ahead and just leave this one as it is, and I'll make this very obvious that this is a test patient. Okay, and we'll put in the date of birth, of course. All right, and you can enter more if you want. That is the basic information that is needed. So you can enter more information. You can enter contact information if that's needed. You can go through and enter as much or as little as applies here. But I'll just leave it pretty simple, and we'll have the patient first, last, and date of birth there. Okay, so at this point, now we have created the patient profile. In the patient profile, of course, you can see all kinds of different information, but we're really going to stay focused on kind of the next step here, which is questionnaires. So this is where we're going to go ahead and click on questionnaires. And the new questionnaire. Now, questionnaires can be used for all kinds of different purposes, but for most commonly, they're going to be used for collecting kind of structured case history information and possibly other patient details, right? So we'll first click here on New Questionnaire. That will bring open your list of available questionnaires. Now, you can choose directly from here, right, just by clicking on which ones you need, or bundles can also be set up. It doesn't appear in your account at this point, but if you needed to have, let's say, 3 questionnaires utilized every time, let's say you're a senior nursing facility, then a bundle can be set up for that. But one hasn't been set up, so I'm going to go ahead and just choose one on the list here. Okay, and then if you are administering this directly with the patient, which I assume would be the case here, then you would click View Online. What this is going to do is it'll bring the questionnaire up so that you can see it, and then typically you would be asking questions and collecting the information on the fly. Alternatively, you could hand over a device to the patient, but I don't get the impression that is what you likely would do here, but that's something, of course, you can kind of work on and discuss internally. I'm going to go ahead and click Continue. So we have View Online and then Continue. That's going to bring open the actual questionnaire. So now you can start going through. So you can start listing certain things. Okay, so we'll just put Testy as their preferred name, right? You can start to enter, and this is just an example of a questionnaire. You may have other ones, of course, that would apply. You will see certain questions may be required, so you want to observe that. Let's just go ahead and put a fake email address in here. Now, it is important to note that if like a phone number, for example, is already in place, you would see this auto-filled, and then you could modify it if needed, or you could just confirm it and leave it as it is. If you do enter something new or modify what's existing, when we complete this questionnaire, that will then update in the patient's profile. So just by making any updates or changes here, it will be reflected in the patient profile. Okay, so let's say they haven't worn hearing aids before. Here we go, no preference. We'll just kind of go through these really quickly. Once again, you can make selections. You also can add comments on the fly. All right, so let's go ahead and add a few more here, and then we'll click Submit. Okay. Okay, and here we can see very simply, just thank you for completing the questionnaire. You go ahead and click Continue. That will take you back into the patient's profile. So right away, we can see the questionnaire. We can see it was completed. You can bring open a PDF of that completed questionnaire. So if you actually want to view all those answers, there they are again. Okay. You also have the ability, if you need to pop back and edit something, you can. Now, as I mentioned before, just by adding that information, we're going to see here that there, for example, is the email address in place, right? So just by doing that, it automatically filled that information in, okay? So at this point, now we've completed the questionnaire, now we want to start the encounter. We're going to start documenting the encounter, so the testing sequence. So we're going to click here on the Appointments Visits tab. Okay, and just a very quick review there. We started off on the General tab when we first created this patient profile. We then went to Questionnaires to create and complete the questionnaire. And then next, we're going to jump to Appointments Visits. Now, just to define these terms very quickly, appointments refer to what is on the schedule, right? So if you have an appointment in place for this patient, right, you will see their appointment here. If you do not have an appointment, that's perfectly fine. You will see this next section here, Visits, which refers to documentation. So in many instances, you'll have an appointment in place, and then you'll create a visit to document that appointment, right? But if there is an appointment in place, you can still have documentation. You can still have a visit that shows any test results, maybe any chart notes or any comments that you have from that patient encounter. Okay, so once again, we're going to focus here on visits. And we'll click New Visit, okay, off to the right here. With that new visit in place, what will happen there is it gives you the ability to take a case history, collect test results, and create the final report, okay, as well as send out those reports as needed. So we'll go here first on Insight. Insight is the tool where you can take your case history and it starts to build your reports simultaneously. So here what you'll see is there are a list of options, right? These have all been customized for your organization, and you can simply click or tap, if you're using a tablet computer, on whatever comes up during that conversation. So in this case, it is set to cover otoscopy. It has some hearing loss in here, so some of this may need to be customized. Right now, this isn't set for case history, but point being is whatever you need to document within this encounter, you certainly can. Okay, so let's just say, for example, we do otoscopy and we say clear bilaterally. What you'll see here is by clicking on that, it automatically added phrasing to the professional report results and a recommendation. So this would be something within the organization. You can decide how you wish to best use this. Like I said, this has been customized, but it can be customized further. So if you want to collect more case history, you absolutely can. All right. Very importantly, once you have finished clicking on any of these areas, you would go ahead and click Export to Reports. I do want to qualify this by saying at this point we haven't done the testing yet. So you might have just done otoscopy. You might just do it at this point and then come back later after you finish testing and do more. Right? That just depends on your testing sequence. Or you might collect the test results first and then come back and do this. Right? So it just depends on how exactly you wish to do that. But point being is, whenever you have the text in place here, you'll simply click Export to Reports. And that will send that information out to where it belongs. So here you can see in the results section, we now have that otoscopy text. Right? And this, of course, can be modified later on. So this just gives you a very significant step forward in getting your reports completed. Okay. Now, it's really important at this point. One of the most crucial steps that you'll have is collecting test results. And that is going to be done by clicking on Actions in the top menu bar and then launch NOAA. NOAA is the program that will enable you to launch CudaWave, to do your testing, to store those test results, and then get them back into this visit where, of course, the rest of the report can be constructed. Okay, so I'd shown you the process of going into Insight first. Depending on your workflow, you might skip over that. You might go straight, into this visit and say, you know what, the first thing we're going to do is do our testing, right? Or let's say you do otoscopy. Maybe you want to record otoscopy first, and then you move on to testing. Whatever you feel is the best for you. But we're going to go ahead and click Launch NOAA. That's going to go ahead, and you'll get a little pop-up asking if you're sure you want to do that. Yes, I do. And it will then bring open CounselEar NOAA Cloud. Okay. So on my device here, I do not have CudaWave installed. You see I have several other testing modules, but you would see CudaWave installed. And you would go ahead and launch CudaWave, right? And then you do your testing through that interface to completion, right? So you do all the testing that you need to do for that specific encounter, whether it's in a nursing facility or if it is in a correctional facility, okay? So what I'm going to do to simulate this is I'm going to go ahead and put some test data into NOAA. Now, this is not what you would do. You would be doing this work through the CUDA wave. But I'm going to get some test results in place just so we can see what it's like to have results in place and get those migrated over to or transferred over to CounselEar. Okay, and let's see, let's go ahead and grab that one too. And we're going to copy this over really quickly just so we have both ears in place. There we go. Let's make a quick modification here. There we go. All right, so now we have the test data in place. For this example, once again, you would not be doing this directly through the NOAA audiogram module. This would all happen through CUDA wave. All right, so once you have, kind of get back into the workflow here, you have finished testing through CUDA wave, you close the module, you'll then see a session in here that will likely say something like CUDA wave audiogram in place here, basically. And the goal here is, okay, we have this test data in CounselEar NOAA Cloud. Let's get it into this visit, right? So we can get everything in one place. So you would then click on the CounselEar Synergy module. This will enable you to take the test data you just collected through CUDA wave and send it over to this visit. So what we're going to see here is a few things. First off, there is a drop down at the top, and you do want to match this up with the clinic where the location where you're currently working. So it may take a moment to get this in place the first go. So the idea is that if you're seeing multiple patients in the same setting, you can very quickly get that in place and then move forward, right? So let's go ahead and just grab that one there. And then for subsequent visits, it will remember that, right? And then let's say the next day you're in a new location, then you would want to change it to the new location, okay? All right, so we have this in place, and now we're going to say we want this information to go into this visit. So this is saying what's in NOAA, that's what's collected through the CUDA wave. We want that to go into CounselEar, into this visit, so the visit we created today. So we have those two things highlighted, and then we click Export. And that says take the audio data, maybe any temp data, and send it here. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so what that does also is it launches CounselEar in a new tab. That may be in the same browser, maybe in a different browser. So what you typically want to do then is you want to maybe close out the previous browser if you have that still open, right? So I'll go ahead and just close that out. I'll jump back to where I was here, and it takes you directly into the audiogram screen. So the idea being here that you can review, the test results that came over should be exactly the same, no difference there. You also have the ability to determine the classification of the hearing loss. So this is going to help you with your report writing because it means you do not have to write out the classification of the hearing loss. And we can see right away there's a classification off to the right here: sloping, mild to moderate, sensory neural, and symmetric. Okay. You can modify this as you see fit. So if you disagree with any of that, you can go ahead and make any changes that enable you to best describe the test results here. Okay, and like I said, this information is then used when you're writing your report, so you don't have to type it all out. Okay. Other test results, of course, would come over as well. For example, tympanometry, speech, word rec, reflex decay, MCLs, UCLs, and sound and field. Now, I'm not sure how much that you'd be using, but those test results are collected through the CUDA wave and stored in NOAA, would transfer over as well. The first tab here, the configuration tab, this is where you'd go ahead and set your audiometer. And once again, I do not have a CUDA wave designated for this device, but I'll go ahead and just pick something else here just to get something in place. Okay, with some very old calibration dates. So we'll leave that as it is, but your calibration date is stored within your account, so you wouldn't have to mess with that. You can also select the reliability, right? So depending on just the experience you had with that patient, you can pick whether the reliability was excellent or was poor. And same thing for test method. Now, these settings are remembered for the next patient, right? So you don't have to set these every time, but you can change them as needed. I will say transducer, we used inserts, right? So you can set those on the fly. Point being is, the data you collected through CUDA wave will transfer over to CounselEar, so you should be very little you need to do here other than verifying that the configuration information is correct, but you can enter more if you need to for some reason. Okay, but we'll leave this here as just the air conduction and bone conduction testing results, and then we're going to click Continue Main Screen. This is an important step because this will save our work and then take us back to the main screen. All right, now we're back in the main screen in the patient visit screen, and we can see that same classification that we just approved back in the audiogram screen. If you wish to, this may be part of your workflow or not, you can right away create a patient counseling summary. So this enables you to create recommendations where you click here into recommendations. You would then click on whichever ones that you wanted. I'll grab a couple here just for the example. So I just added 2. I go back to the main screen, and now we can see there are 2 recommendations in place, and we can bring open the patient report. This is the patient counseling summary. So by clicking there, we can now bring open and create a single page counseling summary. Okay, and there's different ways to configure this. You can have a message in here that describes the hearing test results as well, so it's very flexible as to how this looks and feels. So I'm not sure if this will be part of your primary workflow, but it certainly can be if you wish. Okay, so at this point now, we've collected our test results, and now we want to finish the professional report. So just by looking at what you currently have in Insight, my suspicion is you will likely pop in here and maybe click on something that describes that hearing loss. Okay, and you can put in results as well. So in this case, we're going to say there's normal to mild loss. This may need to be built out more with more options. And we're going to say for speech testing, we'll insert the word recognition scores or SRT values, right? You can select those as well. So that's once again, something within your organization to determine how you wish to write these reports. That's not for CounselEar to tell you how to do it, or to direct you how to do it. That depends on your specific documentation requirements. But point being is, you would select whatever it is that you need, and then click Export to Reports. So same idea as we saw before with the otoscopy, it pre-filled some of this information, right? Here we can see that the classification of the hearing loss is automatically inserted. There are, of course, options for going directly into the results as well and clicking or tapping on whatever it is you need at this point, right? So you could very easily choose directly from this list as well. If you need to, of course, you can also enter your case history. So you go directly in the case history, and then you can click or tap on whatever applies here, right? So if they mention possible decrease in hearing, and they denied any, dizziness or ringing in their ears, point being is you click on the templates, it will then add the text directly here, and we jump back to the main screen. Now we're going to see our case history in place. So as part of this encounter, we have collected test results through CounselEar Noah Cloud from the CUDA Wave. We've sent that over to this visit. That has populated and created the classification. We've generated our case history, largely through the Insight tab, but also through going directly into the Edit History area and our results section as well. And we can see a couple recommendations have populated. So once again, the idea here is to get the test results in place and get the documentation in place in a consistent and rapid fashion. There are more options to the screen, but I suspect that this would probably be the bulk of the work that's needed to document this encounter. Okay. If needed, you have the ability. I'm sorry, before I show you send it, let's show you the report itself. So you can bring open the professional report itself. In this case, it looks like it's set to not show the audiogram. There are different ways to customize the layout on this as well. So let's just see here if there's another option. You can, or we can assist you with this by getting the kind of proper layout in place. So once that is set up, then for example here, we're seeing the test results, we're seeing the history results, recommendations, those kinds of things then would be built in to the report straight away. And you can fax and email reports out directly from here. So depending on the facility, they may ask you to print that professional report and provide it, or if they ask you to send it, you can fax and email directly through this area here. And that's going to give you the ability. I suppose there is a feature in place currently in your account that the visit needs to be set to complete in order to be able to send things out. And this is an important note as well, is that within each visit, you can set the checklist to a specific status. Now, by default, it starts out, of course, at incomplete. And this gives you the gives you the ability to track your visits, so that way you make sure they all get completed, right? Did all the documentation get done? Any work that's involved with the visit, does that get completed? But once you have said, yes, I've done everything I need, I'm going to go ahead and set this as complete. Okay? At that point, you can go ahead and now send out the report. And I apologize, one other thing you need to do, there are multiple features here in your account in play, and that is to lock the visit. So we're once again in the General Information tab, and there's a lock feature. What this does is it just puts, a little control in place that says this record's locked. So if anyone pops back into this patient's profile, looks at the visit, they know that you've completed the visit, you've locked it, and so then they can't edit it from there. Okay, but of course now we can send it, right? So you could have as many recipients listed in this visit as you need. So a physician's office or a facility, and then you can send out the professional patient reports, even chart notes, via fax and or email. So some of that will just depend on specifically how you want to get these reports out to any facility or personnel that may need this information, and maybe that'll be done later. Maybe that won't be on site. But just in general, I want you to be aware of that as an option. Okay. One quick note is that because CounselEar is a cloud-based system, you can log in from any internet-enabled device, and you can be logged in as many times as you like. So if you had CounselEar open on different browsers in the same device, that's perfectly fine, or in multiple tabs, also perfectly fine. You do want to make sure you keep track, right, if you have multiple patients open, exactly what you're working on. But part of the reason I mention that is that when you launch NOAA is just for one patient at a time. So in this case, I would be launching for test patient 2. You would then close NOAA before you see the next patient, right? So typically after you've transferred the results from NOAA to CounselEar, you'd go ahead and just close the NOAA Cloud windows. Let me bring those back up. So first I'll close Synergy, and then I'll close NOAA Cloud, right? And then whenever you call back the next patient, you'll be ready to fire up NOAA Cloud again and collect their test results. Okay, hopefully this provides some clarity to your process. As you determine more about this, I'm happy to hear feedback on what would be the best kind of workflow for you all, and we can assist with any template creation or any other types of help that you need. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and take care.